It's standard practice in science these days that when you do your publication, you put out a press release as well.
What's a publication?
Your publication is like the peer-reviewed journal. That's where all of the details, all of the science goes, all the learned stuff.
Not a novel.
Yeah, not a novel, but it's very, very wordy, very dense. So the peer-reviewed journal gets all the wordy, sciencey formula kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the press release does this is what it means in sort of plain English, easy to read.
Single sentence paragraphs.
Yeah, stuff like that. But also occasionally in the press releases, you can get some extras, some disclaimers, qualifications, sort of notes of warning. And so it's pretty interesting.
I'm already so happy right now.
It was pretty interesting when I was reading this press release for a pretty interesting paper, really, where they said, look, we stand by our results and we love our results. They're great, but we are emphatically, just so you're all aware, not climate change deniers. Please, please don't take our results the wrong way. Welcome to the Wholesome Show. Science stories for you, listener. For you, listener. These are crafted, molded specially for you to listen while you're up the back of the class.
Everyone who hears a slightly different story. That's how we do it.
Each one is just for you.
Yeah, we use algorithms.
The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant.
Me, Dr. Roderick Griffin. I'm not a climate denier, but I know a bloke who is, Lamberts.
And we are brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science.
And not denial.
No, not denial.
We say no to denial and yes to not denial. I think that's in the university motto, isn't it?
No to denial and yes to not denial.
Say yes.
It might be punchier.
To not denial, we say absolutely a lot.
All right. Okay.
Fuck. It's such a good start.
We'll see. Yeah.
It's something with look. I'm not racist, but when you look at the genetics, you're like, oh God, here we go.
I'm not doing that.
I've read a few. I might bring them in. I've read a few papers and set them for certain ethics courses, and it's really great. It's like we don't want you to take this as a how-to anyway, and off we go.
I don't know how well you know your poles of the world, Rod.
There's the north and the south.
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, more than that, because there's the north.
It's magnetic.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. So there's the North Pole and the South Pole, the northern magnetic pole and the South magnetic pole.
There's the sexy pole and the average pole.
Yep.
Of the Earth. Two
other poles that aren't commonly talked about.
Stanislaw and Vladimir.
Yeah, that's true.
Got it.
No, I love these. I love them. The Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility. So it's not something that the world spins on.
Something with a G-spot. No one knows where that is.
It is a little bit. There's actually a continental pole of inaccessibility as well. But I like the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility.
We could spend the whole episode me guessing what that is. I mean, you can throw the notes away. Carry on.
The hardest place in the world to get to from the coast. So basically, all oceans have them. In the middle of them somewhere is the spot that's the middle of the ocean that is furthest away from land. And there's each ocean has one. Pacific, Atlantic.
They're not circles.
They're not circles.
So I think there may be a problem. Carry on.
But there is a global pole of inaccessibility, which is the spot in the ocean that is furthest possible away from land.
Of all spots in all oceans, this one is the most land distant.
It's the most land distant. So this is why it's not a famous pole. It's not as famous as the North Pole, but
it should be pretty famous.
Moderately.
No, we love a most, biggest, least. We love our extremes.
Any guess where the global Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility is?
Under the Arctic.
No, it's not. It's not. It could be, but it's not.
Given if it was under it, then the land would be straight up. The Mariana Trench.
Yes, that's by depth. That's by depth. This one is how far from land. So it's down in the South Pacific Ocean. Somewhere between Antarctica, South America, and New Zealand is a long way to that side of it, to the left.
Okay.
It's where, I mean, it sounds cool because it's as far away from land as you can get. And so H.P. Lovecraft in Call of the Cthulhu, or Call of Cthulhu, not
the Underlord.
Yeah, he's got his underwater city, is at that pole.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's not what this is about. But by definition, it's hard to get to. But the ancient Polynesians were crafty people. So, I mean, there's a story in the 7th century that the ancient Polynesian navigator Ui Te Rangiora.
Flawless.
Yeah. My apologies throughout this. There may be some names that I'm not going to get perfect.
Trick is leave gaps between every syllable.
Anyway, the story is that he made it to Antarctica in the 7th century. So this is
goddamn.
Yeah, like literally.
They're not renowned for their warm clothing either. That wouldn't have been great.
That's the thing. Like there is no puffer jacket, polar fleece sort of thing.
Although New Zealand gets cold.
New Zealand does get cold.
So the Maori probably had some things to do with that.
Well, they described it a place of bitter cold where rock-like structures rose from a solid sea. So it's an oral tradition. We don't have any other evidence, but we do know that they did explore quite a lot. There's another story in 1770, and this one's very well.
Holy shit! 100 years later. I mean, 1,000 years later.
So this is just very well documented. I'm just giving good stories of Polynesian navigators. Tupaia, who jumped on Captain Cook's ship when Captain Cook was doing his first voyage around the South Pacific and gave him a chart of all of the islands in like a 6,000 kilometre radius around.
Whoa.
So you hear the story about Captain Cook being this great navigator, and sure, he achieved a lot, but like he just said, are there any locals that know the way? And there's a guy that says, yeah, cool, I got a map. Here you go. Here's this awesome map.
Do you know what that means? I didn't realise this. I am a great navigator.
Because you borrow the
hey Google, where's blah? It's over there. Fuck, I found it.
So he's got this map, and the map that Tupaia gave Captain Cook, still in the British Library. It's super detailed map of all of the islands. Yeah. Let's say yes.
Okay, I'll say yes.
Accurate enough of all the islands around him.
It's cool.
And in maybe the 13th century, or could have been earlier, could have been the 4th century, but it seems to be probably
13th or 4th.
Yes, one of those, but it's more likely the 13th century.
I'm going to go 9th.
Hotu Matua made it somewhere very near the pole of inaccessibility.
Okay.
He and his crew got to an island they eventually called Rapa Nui, or Big Rapa.
Yeah.
Big Rapa.
Yeah.
That's just about the most inaccessible island in the world. It's as close as one of the closest landmasses to the pole of inaccessibility, that being the definition. It's 3,500 kilometres from the nearest mainland, 2,000 kilometres from the nearest other inhabited place.
How close is it to the pole though, of
inaccessibility?
Yeah.
Let's say 2,000 kilometres. No,
so it has to be further away.
It's one of the.
Does it count as land? Because that would screw it up.
So it counts as land. So it's one of the 3 bits on the circle that is the outside of the pole of inaccessibility.
Okay.
So it's one of the last places that's getting down there.
I thought I'd found an obvious flaw in this one.
No. It's just down that way. It's just down there. It's very, very remote.
So it's a long way away from any other land, and this pole is even longer away.
Yeah. Okay. Drop the pole. Don't need to know about the pole anymore. It's about the island.
But I'm obsessed.
It's about the island.
Okay.
But 2,000 kilometres from the nearest other inhabited island. It's miles from everywhere. Okay, but Hotu Matua and a collection of his friends and family, they got there and they set up a little civilization of their own, a little pocket universe. They farmed, they caught fish, they developed, and I didn't know this until reading this, a unique system of writing that to date remains undeciphered. The only form of Polynesian writing, which is just wow.
I know, or I've heard a lot about this island. That bit, no. Hadn't heard. That's wild.
It's interesting what people don't hear about this island.
I'm amazed.
And they built.
It wasn't in the movie. There was a movie.
I'm sure there's a movie. No, of course there's movies, because this is a really interesting island. It's if you were to write a definition of an enigmatic island, it's number 1. Like it is number 1, because this small little pocket universe, this pocket civilization, they built a truly impressive collection of nearly 1,000 stone monoliths.
They did.
Moai. We know them as Easter Island heads. They're not heads. They're mostly they're actually bodies, but they have big heads.
I know the feeling.
They're placed all around the coastline of the island. Some were up to 10 meters high and weighed like 86 tons. Most of them were a bit smaller than that. But another thing that I found out when reading this, a lot of them also had these Moai stone heads, had ornate red top knots on top. So they're the pukao as well. I didn't see that. And
they were red, were they?
Yeah, they were red. They were made of a different stone. So you make the body out of the black basalt, and the top is out of this red
red rock.
Yeah, a red rock. It's awesome. They also, as some researchers discovered in 1979, often but not always had eyes put in them, coral eyes.
I'm not human.
No, not human eyes.
I thought you were going to say they have monocles on them or something. The way you were gesturing is like, and some of them have monocles with their top hats.
Do you know that would be so nice? Well, okay. There are some who kind of thought that kind of thing a little bit.
I say these look like eyeglasses.
Indeed.
This must be the gentleman leader.
But after sustaining that unique little pocket universe for about 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Possibly less, possibly a bit more, but anyway, and achieving truly unique things, the Rapa Nui civilization collapsed.
That's what happened in the movie too.
They stopped carving the Moai. Many of the Moai were toppled and fell, and their population plummeted to maybe just 3% of what they were just a few decades earlier. The question is, what happened? Actually, no. The actual question is, why does our answer matter? But before that, before I tell you what actually happened, let's hear a bit more about the beginning. So oral tradition holds a Rapa Nui, and Rapa Nui is the Polynesian name for the islands, but it's not the original name because we don't necessarily have the original.
It's written down. You just read it.
But it may be connected with the original name, but it's not necessarily goes all the way back. Okay. Anyway, that's the name that it is known by now, but most people in the rest of the world know it as Easter Island. So it was settled by that two-canoe expedition, possibly in the year 1200, from western parts of Polynesia, Marie Renga or Marie Tohei, by the chief that I said, Hotu Matua, and his captain Tuo Ko Iho. The island was first scouted by after the chief dreamed of a far-off country. And then he'd lost 3 wars with his neighbouring chief, and he's like, I got to bugger off. I'm going to look for this new place.
I had a dream. I'm going to have a few punch-ups. Back to the dream.
Yeah, let's go. Had some fun. Well, look, obviously there was some sort of neighbourhood dispute.
Shit didn't go well. Okay.
So at that time of the arrival, the island already had one lone settler, Ngai Tavake Te Rona.
Imagine his surprise.
He doesn't turn up anymore. I don't know. He's like...
Oh, look. There's no one here.
I don't know. I mean, they called him a settler, so it sounds like he's pretty happy being there. But it could have been the other way around. It could have been he's like, "Thank you, rescue me." I don't.
I see options.
Yeah, I see options, but he didn't keep going. After a brief stay at Anakina, the colonists moved around the whole island. It's not a huge island. It's only like 20 or 30 square kilometres or something like that.
ACT.
And they started carving the Moai straight away.
Well, look, you got to have priorities. New settlement, miles from anywhere. What we need is a ring of giant statues.
I kind of think you do.
That's what I did. Every time I move into a new house, ring of giant statues. First thing I do. I don't even get the electricity put on until that's sorted.
No, sure.
That's a smart.
And it was the captain, not the chief, but the captain of the first ship who said, this is what we need. We need some Moai all around. He was the one who brought the statues and caused them to work. Now, this is what I said before, the radiocarbon dating. So that was oral tradition. That's what we know from the oral tradition. Radiocarbon dating says probably around the year 1200. And the radiocarbon dating says as soon as we've got settlements, we got Moai. So it happened like as straight away, as you said. Like,
wow. Do you want food? Hang on. Do you want a hut? No.
I
said fucking statues.
Give me some statues.
Statues first. Okay.
So they carved the statues out of a rock quarry up in one of the volcanoes, Raraku. And then there's debate about how they moved around. They would move these giant statues, so up to 86 tons. Utes, yeah.
Utes.
Probably not ute.
That's where the word comes from, ute.
So they'd either roll them on palm trees, or maybe they could sort of walk them by sort of...
a bit, get out of the way, down there.
I mean, they're big and they're heavy, and these are, it's not a huge island, and they definitely didn't have any machines.
Well, no, a lever is a machine, man.
Okay, all the Moai are placed. About half of the Moai are still in the quarry. So there's a bunch that were half carved or not completely carved that were in the process of being carved.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that's like 400 or something like that are still in the quarry. But about 400 are...
400 are still in the quarry?
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah, there was heaps. I mean, this is a process. And
I had in my head it was like 80 in total,
nearly 1,000 all up.
Holy
Nearly 1,000 all up.
Wow, okay.
It was. There's heaps, and you can get a nice map of where they are on the island, and they're literally like a fence. They're all in fence, and they're all nearly all looking inland. Watching over the villages is how it's mostly interpreted.
They were guarding them. They were keeping them in.
Keeping them here.
It was an alien space prison, and in the olden days, those things are actually electrified, and they sent beams of shield to keep the baddies in.
In terms of where this story goes,
doing all right?
Yeah, no, there's a parallel. There's a parallel that comes later. And archaeologists and cultural anthropologists are saying, okay, the Moai are bearers of sacred mana, so they have a lot of political and religious authority.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the indigenous inhabitants. What about Europeans? So the first European.
We're here to improve things.
Yes. Surprise listener. The Europeans are not the heroes of this story.
You with your black arm view. What is it? Black armband view of history.
I know, right?
You're ruining everything.
The first European to reach Rapa Nui was Jacob Roggeveen. So he's a Dutch explorer and merchant.
I just want to see what's going on here.
Indeed. But the story, it actually starts with his dad, Arend. Arend was a mathematician, astronomer, student of rhetoric, philosophy. He was a dabbler.
Oh, yeah.
And theorist of navigation. But he also loved, he had a dream, just like Hotu Matoa. He had the dream of Terra Australis. So in that era, so this was in the 17th century, a whole bunch of maps. They had pretty decent maps of the world. So they'd have Africa, North America, South America,
dragons,
Europe. Less dragons this time. They're reducing dragons, but they had a huge continent down the bottom. They were like, there must be something down there because it needs some weight to hold the Earth.
Stop it from floating away.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I don't know.
I've always agreed with that.
I don't know why they all just got this idea of, yes, there must be some land down there.
Or the Earth would flip over. Because we all know it has an up and down.
It's not flipped over.
No, it's up, it's the right way up.
So there must be some sort of Terra Australis. So this is this mystery southern land.
Which means heavy ballast continent.
Kind of. Okay. He got permission from the States General of the United Netherlands. So you had to ask permission if you can go down there.
From the States General?
I think the States General is like the Parliament of United Netherlands.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But they said, you can go and explore. In this time, you needed permission to go and explore, not from the people that you were exploring on top of, but from the people.
They don't own it.
Yeah, well, yeah. But they didn't want to explore in each other's patch. So
apologies for cross exploring.
Yeah, no. There was I think it was the Portuguese and the Spanish had a line. You can explore on this side, you can explore on that side.
Which, of course, was dutifully honoured entirely.
But Arend, he got the permission but couldn't raise any money. And he died 4 years later in 1679. His dream unfulfilled.
Oh.
But his son got the bug, or he very slowly got the bug. Because he must have inherited the permission from his dad. But he didn't rush. He went out and became a merchant. He went to the East Indies or the West Indies, West Indies.
All the Indies.
Yeah, one of the Indies.
Multi-Indies.
He made his fortune, made a bunch of money. He picked a bunch of religious fights as well.
Good call.
What
are you, religious? Come on, put them up. Put them up, I say. Put them up.
And in the 1721, so this is literally 40 years later, he's had this permission sitting in the back drawer for a long time.
That's the long play.
At 62. So his dad died when he was like 20s or something like that.
He was in his 60s.
And he inherited the permission then. And then he thought, at 62, I've had enough religious fights. I've made my money. I'm going to go and explore.
I'm feeling like an early developer then because, I've had my religious fights at other things and maybe I'm ready. I don't feel bad now. If I was 60 to be okay.
Yeah, maybe. Look, and it's a nice, if you haven't written your novel or achieved your rock band stardom or
Or your
explored
grand theory of everything.
any of these, you still got time. Unless you're over 62. Sorry.
Oh, if you're 63, just turn off now. Just forget it. Check yourself in.
Okay. They left in August 1721, and Roggeveen guided his expedition down south, past South America, through the Falkland Islands and around Cape Horn. I'm gesturing around. Ships proceeded up the coast of Chile, through the Juan Fernandez Islands.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
as traditionally called,
they pushed off into the unknown. Now, I'm going to read a whole chunk from Roggeveen's journal.
Are you ready? Not really. Shall we go?
Look,
Oof.
These guys had pretty good ideas at this point. I mean,
Still.
I still admire, this is the thing about the Polynesian navigators.
Oh,
I mean, they're in the Dutch are in ships that have maybe, I don't know, say 50 people on them or something like that. Don't quote that number.
they're big though.
But the Polynesians are in, they're not just canoe. Like they are.
They got sails, yeah.
They got sails and they're two canoes together, but they're not huge vessels, but my God.
No.
They look awesome actually.
Yeah, I've seen live mock-ups and things, I think at least in Fiji, and the big canoe, like war canoes and stuff, are freaking impressive. Anyway.
Still, you're in the middle of the ocean and...
Oh, no, then it becomes less impressive.
And you can be days and days and days away from seeing anything.
I'm thinking months.
But, the thing is, Captain Cook was later. He was pissed off because he found out at this point, actually, the Polynesians are faster at moving around. Like they had sails and also they've got paddles and oars and they were probably faster vessels and they probably knew the area of the Pacific.
Being becalmed is less of an issue when you can actually paddle your boat. It's hard to paddle the Endeavour.
I think they were, this goes back again to, European ideas of superiority.
Yeah.
But he was like, how did you get there faster than me? And they're like, you are so slow, dude.
We can paddle.
Yeah, I think so.
Paddle yours, mate. Come on, I'll even lend you my oars.
So I'm going to read a chunk from Roggeveen's journal.
Alrighty.
We continued on another 12 degrees to the westward of the latitude above mentioned, and had landbirds and seafowl about us every day who kept company with us until we at last sighted an island, on the 6th of April, being our first Easter day, at which we were heartily pleased. And because it was on the day of the glorious resurrection of our Lord that it appeared to us, we at once named it Pashland, or Easterland.
Pashland. Means something different in Australia.
Pashland. It's about 8 miles in circumference. Our African galley had got close in with the land and reported that the place appeared to be very fertile. That's their cook. So he had to...
I'm just enjoying the traditional sparse prose of the time.
Oh, my God.
They just cut right to the chase, don't they?
Moreover, that it must be inhabited, as smoke had been seen, noticed rising in several places. Next day, we stood in with our ships to look for a harbour, whereupon one of the natives came off in a small skiff to meet us some 2 miles off the land. We took him aboard our vessel and gave him a piece of linen cloth to wrap around his body, for he was quite naked. And we offered him beads and trinkets, all of which he hung around his neck, together with a dried fish.
Did you hang the fish around his neck?
But I love going straight for the colonial.
Look at the little child man.
He's naked.
Look at the naked child man.
And we have to cover him, and here's some beads and trinkets.
Here's some pointless shit we don't even want.
Oh my God. I know that the stereotype of these colonists buying people off with beads and trinkets is, but he literally said it.
There's a reason for the stereotype, and it ain't because it's biased.
He was very cleverly and regularly painted with all sorts of figures. Ooh. He was of a brown tint and had long ears which hung down as far as his shoulders, as if they had been stretched to that length by being weighted, after the fashion of the Mongolian Moors.
Ooh.
He was fairly tall in stature, strong of limb, good appearance, and lively in mien, as well as pleasing in speech and gesture. We gave this Southlander, or foreign visitor, a glass of wine to drink, but he only took it and tossed it into his eyes, whereat we were surprised. I don't know.
I really would love to be in a bar when you meet someone for the first time. Thanks. I love that. What was it? He was entertaining. What was the word they used essentially? He
of good appearance, lively in mien, and pleasing in speech and gesture.
Pleasing. He pleased us. As he threw wine in his eyes.
I fancy he thought we designed to poison him by its means, which is a common usage among Indians. Thereupon we dressed our new guest in garments and put him on a hat, but he was evidently very ill at ease in clothing.
Who isn't?
They gave him some food. He was ignorant of spoon, knife, or fork.
Oh,
they played some music, and he danced around and grabbed our hands quite merrily. But he parted from us unwillingly. He held up his hands and cast his glances towards the land and began to cry out loudly in these words, "O Daroga, O Daroga." He was not at all disposed to return to his skiff, but preferred to remain with us, that we might convey him ashore in our ship.
Is that what he was doing?
Anyway,
We find out later that means, would you please rack off, don't go there?
No. It seems okay at this moment. It seems okay.
Well, because he does have, a childlike naivety about the real world, so of course he's going to be happy to see his destroyers come over.
The next day, the natives swam off in the thousands. Some with small dinghies or skiffs brought us many cooked and baked hens, together with many roots, like potatoes and sweet potatoes.
Not special friends.
While on the beach, they were running up and down like deer. Some were seated in groups of 50 or 100 and looked upon our ship with wonderment, some out of mere curiosity, but others were desirous of finding out what design had brought us there.
Like deer?
I think he's just saying they're
It's just what you choose to compare it to. They're running like deer. Were they?
They kindled many fires by their idols, either by way of offerings or for the purpose of prayer.
Or light.
Now,
or warmth.
We thereupon got ready to effect a landing. Means they were going to go ashore.
Land, yeah.
But just then our former visitor came on board together with many others of his people, bringing us a quantity of dressed fowls and roots.
Okay.
Chicken and potatoes. Among them was an entirely white man who was wearing white chocks of wood in his ears as large as one's fist and bore a very devout appearance, so that we took him to be an idol priest. Idol, like worshipping the idol. So.
Oh, not lazy.
No.
Entirely white, I assume they mean painted?
I don't know.
Or albino?
This is just the language that Roggeveen said.
Yeah, because if he was European, they would have said, oh my gosh, it's a euro.
All three of those people possibilities. So he could be painted, could have painted skin. He could have been albino. He could have been European.
Okay.
By some misadventure, one of these natives who were on board our vessel got shot.
Oopsie. I accidentally loaded my musket and tapped down the thing, aimed at him, and pulled the trigger.
Like in the sentence, who's where's the active in this sentence? Got shot.
Yeah.
He became of shot.
There was a shotness about him.
And this must have caused great consternation among them, for they all immediately sprang into the water, and some swam away towards the shore, but others made off in their skiffs with all possible haste.
Must have caused consternation.
We then, with 150 men, soldiers as well as seamen, proceeded in the name of God ashore. The inhabitants pressed round us in such crowds that we could scarcely pass along, so that we had to force our way through them. And because some of them went so far as to lay hold of our arms, our weapons, they were fired upon, by which they were direly alarmed and dispersed, but collected again in swarms, though keeping some 10 paces in front of us.
I'm missing a motive here. What do they mean? They were forced to go forward. What was forcing them?
By the name of God.
Fuck me. I know I should never be surprised, but I repeatedly am.
And just the way that this contact casually descends into violence.
Well, also, and what's the catalyst? Look, somehow there was an enshotment on the boat. Therefore, we're going to storm onto their land with troops.
It's weird. He's describing it pretty. We just went on,
yeah.
And
dude got shot, so we might as well pile on.
So and they're swarming around. Yep. And many of them were shot at this juncture. And among the slain lay the man who had been with us before, at which we were very much aggrieved. We knew that one.
Oh, bugger.
So now we care about it. So in order to obtain possession of the bodies, they congregated in great numbers, bringing with them presents of various kinds of fruits and vegetables, in order that we might more readily surrender them to them, their slain. So it seems like about 12 people were killed.
Okay, cool. No, I mean, that's what you do.
And
that's what I do when I go to a new place, or if I go to a party at a house I've never been to. Like, hey, I haven't seen him.
Start a fight.
Kill a few.
Just a few.
Kill a few, because then they bring me chicken and chips.
Yes, and as you'll see, some nice fruits in a second. The consternation of these people was by no means abated. Even their children's children in that place will in times come to be able to recount the story of it.
I wonder why. I mean, why would that have such an impression on them?
So they kept up an uncommon yelling. Women as children brought palm branches, red and white streamers, and various kinds of fruits, Indian figs, large nuts, sugar canes, roots, fowls. Then it's weird. He says that they bring in the fruit, and they also made tender of their womenkind, asking whether we would accompany them into their huts, or rather take them off to their ships. However,
made tender of.
Yes, indeed.
As in legal tender?
I don't know.
Would you like some ladies?
And this is Roggeveen's own diary. So how is he reporting? It just seems
they offered up, and by offered up I mean we grabbed by
off.
the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
However, we did them no ill.
Of course not.
But we made them a present of a piece of gaily coloured linen.
Oh.
And they liked that. We also distributed coral baubles, small mirrors, by which they might be assured that we were their friends after killing 12 of them.
Yeah, but you had to get that out of the way. That's how they respect you.
Then there's this bit where they bring up a bunch of fruits and great quantities of fruit, being Indian figs as large as a cucumber in a span in length and of proportionate thickness with a green rind. When one peels off the pulp tastes like figs or as sweet as honey. There are sometimes as many as 100 on a single bunch. And I'm like, that's bananas. He's getting a banana. He was quite impressed by the Indian fig that he called the banana.
The cucumber fruit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So he goes on to describe a bunch of things about their households and a bunch what they're eating, the food that they ate, what they farmed, all of those kinds of things.
So as we strode through, shot them and burnt their crops, we thought we'd describe them.
Well, I'll come to his description at the end, but he did also add in a little bit of physical description. These natives were universally blithe and merry, and well-built, strong of limb, not exactly slender, yet nimble on their feet, friendly and pleasant in manner, but submissive withal, and also very timid. As for their complexion, they are brownish, about the hue of a Spaniard. Yet
About the hue of a Spaniard.
You know that they have a complex spectrum,
a colour system.
A colour system. Back
when you go to
get
your house paint, it's like, I want more of a Spanish brown. And have you got one of those?
Yet one finds some among them of a darker shade and others quite white, and no less also a few of a reddish tint, as if somewhat severely tanned by the sun.
So multiple colours of skin.
Yeah, he's observing.
Yes.
Their ears were so long as they hung down as far as their shoulders. Some wore white ornaments in the lobes as a special embellishment.
Okay. So fully sick piercings.
The people had, to judge by appearance, no weapons, although, as I remarked, they relied in case of need on their gods or the idols which stand erected all along the shore in great numbers, before which they fall down and invoke them. These idols were all hewn out of stone and in the form of a man with long ears, adorned on the head with a crown, yet all made with skill, whereat we wondered not a little. We thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
So he ends his description here with, this island is a suitable and convenient place at which to obtain refreshment, as all the country is under cultivation, and we saw in the distance whole tracts of woodland. It should be possible to grow corn all over, or even plant vineyards, which might be very serviceable in the event of a new discovery of the South Land. The people of this island appeared of such disposition as to be easily brought to the Christian faith.
What a good idea. So look at all the shit they've got going on that's really working. We can fix that.
We can fix that. You can come here easily and get refreshment, and also
change everything.
You can change everything.
It's cool.
I kind of. Do you feel like something might be coming?
No.
All right.
I feel like this is the end of it. They introduced vineyards, and the Rapa Nui label is now renowned for its Chardonnay.
It could be. Like a New Zealand Chardonnay. It's probably about the same sort of climate.
I'll take a Pinot.
It's well known that by the 20th century, things had really collapsed. Yeah. And by 20th century, that's definitely much later than things. Benny Pizer, in his excellent article in the journal Energy and Environment, not sure why, but you got it there, Benny. That's awesome.
That's what I'm looking for.
I'll give you the name of the journal later, but the article later, but I don't want to flag it now. He notes this. When at the start of the 20th century, the first archaeological expeditions tried to reconstruct the island's history, they stumbled upon an exhausted terrain. The indigenous population had been almost completely annihilated. Its culture and natural habitat destroyed as a result of physical, cultural, and environmental obliteration. So where do we go? So we met at Roggeveen's time.
Yeah.
Thousands of people. A paradise, he called it, full of farmland, full of people doing things, and all of the people being strong of mind and lively of limb.
A paradise. Like this is a paradise. We can fix that.
So what are the possible answers? the most famous one comes in Jared Diamond's mega million-selling book, Collapse, How Societies Choose or Fail to Succeed. Now, he wasn't the first to put this idea forward. You can see it in academic articles in the 80s and 90s, and in fact, you can go all the way back to Thor Heyerdahl in the 1950s. But Diamond made it popular.
Yeah.
So what was Diamond's answer? It's pretty simple for him. The Rapa Nui people, the Polynesians, arrived, and they went statue building crazy.
Yeah.
And statue, and all that statue building and moving meant they cut down tree.
That's what the movie depicts, I do believe.
More statues, more trees, more statues, more trees, more statues, more trees. And then the Rapa Nuians, the Easter Islanders, destroyed their forest, degraded the island's topsoil, wiped out their plants, and drove the animals to extinction. Basically, ecocide is a way people have you destroyed the environment, and then it couldn't sustain that civilization anymore.
That is the classic story I've heard too, whereas basically at least a subset of idiotic, idol-worshipping twits came in and mashed everything because of that. Yeah,
they say, the decline was not instant. It was as a result of this self-inflicted environmental devastation.
That is the
complex
classic.
Society collapsed, and it descended into civil war and cannibalism and self-destruction.
Yeah, standard stuff. Yeah.
They reckon it happened around 1680. So at least 40 years before Roggeveen turned up.
I see a hole in that then.
Yes, quite a hole.
Call me picky.
The power of the chiefs and the priests was overthrown at this time by some military leaders called the Matatoa, then it disintegrated into a civil war. Now, during the civil war, they started toppling each other's idols, pushing them down, and fighting over resources.
Oh no, you didn't!
I know.
Yeah.
Well. So it resulted in an abrupt and irrevocable termination of the giant statue carving. So in Diamond's theory, they stopped carving any statues.
Because they're busy fighting.
And then started fighting and pushing them all down. So the statue toppling event, the Huri Moai, and that kept going. They didn't push them all down in one day. It was sort of, they would keep pushing them down until the 1830s. By 1838, the only standing Moai were on the slopes. Just a few were still standing.
Okay.
And then they also turned to the largest remaining meat source available, humans, who, in Diamond's book, whose bones became common in late Easter Island garbage dumps. All right. Diamond cites some oral traditions here.
Sure.
Of cannibalism. The most inflammatory taunt that could be snarled at an enemy was, "The flesh of your mother sticks between my teeth." So in Diamond's eye...
That's not necessarily cannibalism.
No, it's not.
That's a different podcast.
It's really not. Oh, there you go. So he reckons when Europeans arrived in the 18th century, they found a crashed society where there was just a few survivors left, and all of those statue makers were gone.
Exactly as Rogan did not describe.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's summed up here. It was the islanders themselves who had destroyed their own ancestors' work.
Yes.
Stupidity of man.
Because they're like children. Wasn't that the? I mean, he didn't say that, but
Well, look, I don't think he said that. Like there was in this argument, there's a whole bunch of racism. And I'll come to some of that racism as well.
Of course.
But there's a whole bunch of this argument suited a purpose. So when Diamond wrote his book is 2005. It fits into the environmental movement where you get a whole bunch of people saying we're so stupid as humans that we will use up our resources until we die. So it's
not like we haven't done it before. Here's a micro example. I get that. I get the politics and the messaging. I understand why that would be appealing.
Yeah, like there's books called The Green History of the World by Clive Ponting, and he begins with the lessons of Easter Island. Others would say, this is a guy called Flenley, would say, Earth's going to collapse by 2100. We're all going to be doomed, which, I got no dog in that fight. Yeah, maybe we are. But then they would use Easter Island still seems the most plausible model for Earth Island. So they're using this. Jared Diamond himself. Easter Island's isolation makes it the clearest example of a society that destroyed itself by overexploiting its own resources. those are the reasons why people see the collapse of Easter Island society as a metaphor, a worst-case scenario for what may lie ahead for us in our own future.
And look, it's a classic. You see the things through the lenses you're looking, and I mean, of course, you're looking for that without malintent even. You're going to see it.
But surprise, it's all a crock of shit.
Well,
it's all a huge crock of shit. And it's based on some interesting bits of racism and a whole bunch of denial of what actually happened here.
That would do it.
Thing is, people knew all along. There was a bunch of I'm going to cite the research that came out at the very start. That was by Robert Di Napoli and Carl Lippo. So that's really recent research that's helped to contribute to this story. But you can go back all through the 20th century.
Yeah.
People knew what happened. It's just that other people denied it. And
well, you can see what would be dangerous too. So I'm assuming from your start as well that if you do put up and go, actually it wasn't ecocide or ecological catastrophe, people go, well, if you're denying that, that means you're pro earth rape.
That's why Carl Lippo, he was the guy at the beginning, part of that study that I'm going to talk about in a second. He said we're not denying climate change because people had taken up the story of Easter Island so much as this metaphor of, the climate's going to collapse. This is what happens when you use up your resources.
Yeah, this is our iconic story.
It's just bullshit, and it just ignores what actually happened. So there's a Franco-Belgian expedition in 1934, full on the awesome era of terrible anthropology, awesome.
Fuck, they would have eaten well though. Delicious beers.
It'd just be so. Alfred Metreau and Henry Lavachery. So they documented it in 1934, but there's others all the way through.
Yeah.
So as I said, first European visitor, Roggeveen, 1722. He saw a potential paradise.
Yeah.
Captain Cook came 50 years later, and it didn't look like a paradise to him, but he was like, it looks fine.
Ticking along?
Yeah, I think, potentially you could imagine Roggeveen turns up and it's spring or it's harvest time and everything's looking awesome. Cook turns up and it's winter and it's not so glorious, but it didn't seem like society was in a radically different way.
But also for Roggeveen, let's say it was spring, he's seeing a bunch of naked chicks. Surrounded by food. They're all being very compliant. I mean, that is going to be a white European 17th century, I'm going to call it paradise.
Oh, no doubt.
Honestly,
yeah. But between 1722, when Roggeveen turned up, and the end of the 19th century, we know at least 53 European boats. Explorers, navies,
53.
Whalers, slavers.
Sweet.
Visited Rapa Nui.
Cool.
And while Roggeveen's visit was bad, 12 people killed, some were way worse. So
I think slavers would probably be a bit worse than killing 12 people.
Yeah, they were.
They took 13?
They were. So let's go October 1862. So this is in the middle of the US Civil War sort of time.
Yeah.
2 marauding ships landed on Easter Island in search for slave labourers. The crew seized and captured 150 people and transferred them to Peru, where they were sold as slaves for an average price of $300.
Sweet.
Between 1862 and March 1863, an estimated 1,000 to 1,400 more Rapa Nuians, the actual numbers unknown, were captured and deported by Peruvian and Spanish slave raiders.
1,000 plus.
Yep. And we've got a pretty good estimate, I'll come to that later, of the total population.
All right.
Among them were the king and his son, and it's believed that almost 90% of those that were captured by these slavers died in the following months of disease and maltreatment.
Well, that's just bad economics.
And, because that was so horrible, international protests, and Peru repatriated some 100 Polynesians who had survived the horrors of this slave labor, but they put them back on random Polynesian islands, and they took them from random Polynesian islands.
They won't know the difference.
And that was a deliberate policy.
Oh.
So they would go slaving, blackbirding it was called.
Yeah.
They'd capture Polynesians throughout these islands, including Rapa Nui. And if they were going to put them back, then they would put them randomly back to instigate tribal conflicts and confusion.
What the fuck did you? How did you
fucking horrible people
make a terrible thing worse?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So they're all
cool.
According to some later accounts, about 100 or so enslaved people were shipped back to Easter Island. We don't know if they were from the right place or not.
No.
But most of them died on their way from smallpox. Renewed slave raids continued in the 1870s. While this was happening, they also decided, some European traders, I'm not sure quite why, to do an actual ecocide and environmental destruction. So there's these guys.
We get bored just stealing people.
I know J.B. Dutroux-Bonnier and Jay Brander, they had a policy of trying to get rid of the last remnants of the indigenous population. So this is they're talking actual genocide here. And to do this, they burnt down all their houses. And after burning the natives' huts, Dutroux-Bonnier had all their sweet potatoes pulled out of the ground 3 times to facilitate the persuasion of the starving natives who had thus little hope of surviving on their own island.
Were they slaving as well, or they just wanted to say this is ours now, or I
don't know why. I don't know. I don't think they were. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know what.
Why'd you do that? Been a long trip. We're bored.
It could have been. It could have been.
So it's not even clear what the intent was.
So at the same time, there's these stories of cannibalism going around that were totally made up.
Of course.
In the European press.
Yeah.
So there's a story of a young commander of a French vessel who had landed on Easter Island, fortuitously escaped being the victim of cannibals. Monsieur Oliver was brought back on board, his whole body covered with wounds. He had on various parts of his body the teeth marks of these cruel islanders who had begun to eat him alive.
And he had an apple stuffed in his mouth and a sprig of parsley in his
and he had the big cauldron. He was still in the big cauldron. It's complete bullshit. It's totally made up.
Cutting up carrots.
They made up more of these stories to justify going in and Christianizing the island.
Can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah, because in this same era, while the slave traders are raiding and the others are ripping up the crops, then you've got French missionaries who came to introduce Christianity to get rid of the cannibalism. So between 1864 and 1868, you angry yet?
I'm a little miffed.
French missionaries converted the population of the island to Christianity.
To save them from the fake cannibalism.
Erasing their connection with the past and with the Moai.
Cool. Cool. Well done.
They're on the brink of extinction.
Look, say what you will about Christian missionaries, but they get shit done. Or got shit. Maybe they still do, actually.
So this is like literally half of the population at least being removed by slavers, smallpox, other diseases, and starvation treatment, like they're getting their crops burned, their houses burned, and then you get these missionaries coming in, and within 4 years, exhausted from the ravages of genocide and unable to hold on to their vanishing traditions, the survivors surrendered to the calls of Christian missionaries.
That's what true devotion is based on.
By 1868, the last survivors of a once stupendous civilization had been converted. By 1877, the annihilation of Rapa Nui's civilization was practically complete.
What year?
1877.
Okay.
So there was no one knew anything more. They were all of the previous traditions. 10 years later, after Chile officially annexed the island in 1888, the few survivors of Rapa Nui's forgotten genocide were forced into a detention centre in the village of Harango, a camp where they were confined under the most appalling conditions for nearly 100 years.
What?
It was surrounded by a barbed wire enclosure with 2 gates in it, and no one was allowed to pass through them without the permission of the Chilean military leader. At 6 p.m, these gates were locked.
Why?
These regulations remained unchanged until 1964.
What the tits?
1,000 surviving Easter Islanders were then living in the most unbelievable wretchedness and lack of freedom.
Why? I know we say this in 9/10 of all episodes, and not only on this podcast, but why choose to be a dick at a colossal scale?
The thing that blows my mind about this.
You've got their island.
This is literally a genocide. Like you have taken huge chunks of the population away, enslaved. You have brought disease. You have brought famine. And then you've locked them all up, and then you've said, "Oh, you did this to yourselves. You did this."
Why? What's in it? Is this what they call fun?
So here's the thing. This is the paper that came out last year. This year. Robert Di Napoli and Carl Lippo from Binghamton University. So they used a radiocarbon dating method to estimate the population size of the island.
Okay.
Going back over time. And what they showed is basically from first settlement in about 1200 up until 1722, when European contact, the population had steadily gone up. There was never a civil war, never a moment when it just didn't happen, just all made up. It was a functioning society that had lived quite well. Yes, they had lost a whole bunch of trees, but they survived and they were resilient and they kept going. There was never this self-destructive collapse.
Cool.
So this is why has this narrative come about? So I was looking at this, and so Diamond, his idea of they killed themselves, ecocide.
Yeah,
it fits into modern environmental movements, but.
Look, it's a quick, simple narrative. If you don't dig too hard and you're looking for those narratives, you're going to find them. That's no surprise.
But there's also this weird racism that goes into this. And this kind of, when I was reading this, it ruined a hero of mine.
Uh-oh.
I was like,
is that me?
Yes, no. No, it didn't ruin you. Thor Heyerdahl, famous anthropologist who did a Kon-Tiki adventure. His theory was that you could go the other way across the Pacific. You could go from South America across to going backwards. Yeah. And so in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I can't remember. He sailed a boat, tiny little boat, the Kon-Tiki. Him and his mates.
The original Kon-Tiki.
The original Kon-Tiki. They floated across. And
before it was a piss artist thing for under 30s.
Yeah. Before that, I thought, oh damn, that's really cool. But the whole problem with that. The reason that he did it is because he reckoned that white people were the ones that built the Moai on Easter Island. He was like, there's no way, and this goes back all of the Europeans, no way these Polynesians, these primitive natives could have done this.
They're Spanish coloured. How could they?
How could they possibly? And so he's like, okay, so it must have been some white people who came across from Europe and down to South America and then had a big civilization.
Popped into Bunnings, got their tools.
And then built all these cool things, and then they were wiped out by the natives. So
who ate them, obviously.
Who cannibalized them, these savages and degenerates. And this idea, it kept going all the way along, this idea that
you're screwed. If your starting premise is, by definition, no matter what, we are superior, then everything else falls into line very conveniently.
And so that's it. So underpinning all of this is a whole bunch of different racisms. There's the racism of slave trading and the actual genocide that happened. But then there's the racism that says these people could never have built this stuff.
Yep.
So it must have been white people and they must have killed themselves. So
not only did white people do it, those dudes were, they killed themselves because they're stupid.
It just blows my mind. Here's a unique little pocket universe, this unique little pocket civilization where they developed their own system of writing, which is unique for Polynesians, but it's still a unique thing around the world.
Yeah.
And they built an amazing system of producing the Moai, and then they were wiped out really quite deliberately. Quite deliberately.
Quickly, like the cultural stuff sounds like it disappeared fast.
Yep. It was a genocide. I mean, part of it was deliberate, part of it was just slave traders being obviously terrible slave traders. But they were, when you think, the population of the island was probably 3 to 4 to 5,000. It was never big. No. And if you lose 1,500 people in a slave raid, you have decimated
your what is it, king and son thereof, etc. like that. That's going to have an impact. But also, I mean, so to speak, slavery I understand. Like there's an impetus, there's an economic reason for it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but like you kind of go, all right, you were doing that for this reason. The other stuff, I mean, like we're doing it for God, and once you have our God amongst you, then you're a good person. I understand the idea as much as it sickens me to my core. But the dudes who pulled up their potatoes and burned their villages just to make them have a shit time, and putting the survivors in a camp for a century.
I know.
Because why?
And then blaming them for it.
Why?
You fucking monsters.
What do you get out of it? What's in it for you? Like, I mean, I don't even understand from the perspective of self-interest.
So there you go. Don't do that. But also don't choose evidence, as Jared Diamond clearly did, that fits your story in advance. As much as I do agree with his argument that maybe we humans might use up our resources and might cause problems.
Well, they're giving it a crack. That's true.
That's a big thing. We got to worry about it. But the Easter Island lesson, the lesson is don't fucking kill people and lie about it.
Damn it. So I have to admit, did you kill that person? Yep. Yes, I did.
Awesome sources for this. So Benny Pies's article, it was the one that I said in Energy and Environment, something. It was called From Genocide to Ecocide. And so he's really the rape of Rapa Nui. There's the DiNapoli, Crema, Lippo, and Reith and Hunt. Approximate Bayesian's computation of radiocarbon and paleoenvironmental records show population resilience on Rapa Nui. Long science title there, guys.
Page turner, though. Real page turner.
And yeah, I'll put some other sources up there on the website.
Do you know also rapamycin, I think, was discovered in the soil. It's a particular kind of active ingredient, which I think is good for longevity stuff, etc. Rapamycin, it's Rapa Nui, like it came from that island. Or at
Really?
least the creatures were found in the soil there, I do believe. There's a lot going on in that island, so luckily we killed it.
I was going to do a story about longevity for you. I couldn't do it in time. It's a different one. Different one. Next year.
I've got
Next
so
year.
many stories.
Wholesome Show is the show that you just listened to or watched. It's me, Will Grant.
Me, not Will Grant.
It's brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Don't Do Genocide and Pretend it was their fault.
The genocidees.
Yeah, it's their fault.